Our next honoree is a man who was an icon in the Dayton community. He had 44 years in the business when he retired. He and Don Wayne were an institution at WHIO TV television, and I am very pleased and honored to introduce and honor posthumously Mr. Ed Krahling.
Ed Krahling was in broadcasting for 44 years, beginning his career in sports, only to become one of the most recognized faces in the Miami Valley on WHIO television. A native of Alliance, Ohio, Krahling spent 2 years in the Navy before enrolling at Mount Union College, where he thought he wanted to be a teacher. But as a student working at a radio station in Alliance, he changed his mind. Broadcasting was in his blood. Krahling came to Dayton in 1961 as sports director for WONE Radio and soon moved to television, working at WKEF as news director. The big break for him came in May of 1967 when he joined WHIO Radio and TV News. Krahling made a name for himself through his reporting of the news and was an excellent writer.
He was like the quiet pillar in the newsroom until a breaking story would erupt, and he would put his nose to the typewriter and get that story out in the most magnificent way. He was a very well-respected reporter, and he was loved and respected by so many, not only by those who worked with him, but with those that he covered.
Ed did not just facilitate the news, he also walked a news beat, talking to sources, gathering news stories. It was not long before Ed got the biggest break of his career, working alongside news icon Don Wayne, co-anchoring the 11 o'clock newscasts, and the rest of this story, of course, is history. Both men dominated the local viewership ratings.
When I was doing all-night radio and hoping to eventually work at Channel 7 someday, I would watch the 11 o'clock news every night with Don Wayne and Ed Krahling. Ed was the star reporter, and he was the 11 o'clock co-anchor man. Of course, Don was a media personality like no other. Don was a really, really good newsman and, a Dayton broadcast personality like no other. But I think Ed got a little bit left in the shadow by Don in those days. Ed was a great reporter, an old radio guy who really cared about writing. I would watch those 11 o'clock newscasts and think, maybe I could be like Ed. And I hope I was.
Ed won numerous awards, including several Emmy nominations. In 1993, Ed retired from broadcasting, and in 2009, he was inducted posthumously into the Ohio Broadcasters Hall of Fame.
He was a good person, good individual, one that you would want to work with every day. He never got mad. He liked everybody. Well, not everybody, but I mean most of the people. And I know when he came to work, he got me in the hall one day, and he was telling me some stories. And he says, you know, where I used to work, people would ask me where I worked, and I would tell them, and they would say, wow, you work with Dr. Creep and Duffy the dog? And then he made the switch over to Channel 7, and people asked him where he worked, and they said, wow, you work with Don Wayne. There was no number one in the newsroom. He was as equal to anybody in the newsroom. He was good, and he loved it.
Ed is a legend in the Dayton-Miami Valley community. His name will never be forgotten, and the Dayton Area Broadcasters Hall of Fame is pleased to welcome him posthumously into the 2013 class.
And now we would like to welcome Florence Krahling to the stage. My husband, Ed Krahling, retired from WHIO in 1993 after 26 years as a news anchor there.
In 1998, he passed away. In 2004, he was inducted into the State Broadcasting Hall of Fame. He still has many local fans, so on behalf of my family, I'd like to thank the Dayton Hall of Fame, because I think it's really important that it's noticed that he is still remembered very well in the area. And I'd especially like to thank Becky Grimes and Tula Stom for being his advocates. Now, I have to tell you that everybody who ever worked with my husband knew that he had a really interesting sense of humor. Now, possibly even a warped sense of humor. Now, even though he was so proud of his 60 share for his new news, which at one time was the highest share of any CBS News affiliate in the country, and even though he was enormously proud to be part of WHIO's news team and part of WHIO Total, he still worked for many years with a sign over his desk that said, "How can you soar like an eagle when you work with turkeys?" Now, all of you know, and Ed knew, and I know, that all of the people who worked for WHIO are still and always were soaring like eagles, and I like to think that Ed still is.